There is something deeply uncomfortable about this truth. Most people spend their entire lives trying to eliminate chaos, and in doing so, they never learn how to live inside it. They build routines to avoid uncertainty. They accumulate certainty the way others accumulate debt, desperately, blindly, convinced that the more they have of it, the safer they will be. And then one morning, without warning, the world shifts. A diagnosis, a loss, a collapse, a silence where there used to be sound. And suddenly, all the routines and certainties reveal themselves for what they always were. Thin walls against an infinite storm. What you are about to hear is not a guide on how to feel better. It is something more difficult and more valuable. It is an invitation to understand why the mind that remains calm in the middle of chaos is not the mind that has escaped suffering. It is the mind that has gone all the way through it and come out the other side carrying something most people never find: clarity. The ancient Stoics had a word they returned to again and again. Not happiness, not success. Equanimity, a steadiness of soul that does not depend on circumstances remaining pleasant. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the greatest empire on earth while watching plague consume his people and war consume his generals, wrote not victory speeches but private meditations. He was not pretending the world was good. He was learning how to remain whole inside a world that was not. And here is the first reversal worth sitting with. Calm is not the absence of storm. It is a different relationship with storm. The person who has never been shaken has never been tested. The person who has been shaken and found something unmovable inside themselves, that person has discovered something rare. Not comfort, not safety, a kind of interior architecture that the chaos cannot reach. Think of someone you know, or perhaps yourself, who has walked through genuine difficulty. Not inconvenience, not discomfort, genuine difficulty. The kind that removes sleep and appetite and the ordinary sense that tomorrow will resemble today. Now think about who that person became afterward. The flattening of unnecessary worry, the new hierarchy of what actually matters. The quiet that settles in a person who has already survived what they feared most. That quiet is not emptiness. It is the result of something having been burned away. The philosopher Epictetus, who was born into slavery and lost physical freedom long before most people face their first real crisis, understood this with unusual precision. He wrote that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about things. The chaos is not the catastrophe. Our interpretation of it is. This is not a comfortable idea. It does not tell us that the world is fair or that pain is an illusion. It tells us something harder, that the space between what happens and how we respond is the one territory that remains ours. Always, in every possible circumstance. That space is where the calm mind lives, and it can be cultivated. Not in perfect conditions, only in imperfect ones. In the modern world, chaos has taken new and relentless forms. It is not only the dramatic eruptions, the losses and the crises, it is the low, constant hum of information without meaning, the unending scroll, the anxiety that arrives before breakfast, generated by headlines and comparisons, and the permanent availability of everyone's worst fears. We are perhaps the first civilization in history to be simultaneously overinformed and profoundly disoriented. And the result is a particular kind of mental exhaustion that does not come from doing too much. It comes from being exposed to too much without the interior resources to metabolize it. The Stoics did not know smartphones, but they knew distraction. They knew the crowd. They knew the way external noise colonizes internal silence. And their answer was not retreat, it was discipline of attention. Choose what you give your mind to, not because the rest does not exist, but because what you dwell on shapes who you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The quality of your mind is determined by the quality of your thoughts." Centuries later, that sentence has not aged a single day. If what you have heard so far resonates with you, If something in it is touching a question you have been carrying, consider staying close to this channel. Subscribe and leave a comment below with one word that describes the inner quality you are most trying to build right now. Not for the algorithm, for yourself. Because naming what we seek is often the first step toward finding it. Now we enter the second part of this journey. And the shift is this. We have spoken about surviving chaos. Now we must speak about something more surprising. The possibility that chaos, rightly met, is not the enemy of a meaningful life. It is one of its essential conditions. There is a concept in philosophy and the natural sciences called anti-fragility. The idea, explored deeply by thinker Nassim Nicholas Taleb, is that certain systems do not merely resist chaos, they grow stronger because of it. The immune system, the muscle under resistance, the creative mind under pressure. Human beings are, at their deepest level, anti-fragile. We are not made to be preserved in stillness. We are made to be tested, disrupted, and reformed. The question is not whether the disruption will come. The question is whether we have built the interior conditions to transform it into something that serves us. But here's where the second uncomfortable truth arrives. Most of what we call self-protection is, in fact, self-limitation. We avoid the conversation that might break something open. We avoid the silence that might reveal something we do not yet want to know. We avoid the decision that might change everything, because change, even necessary change, feels like a form of chaos. And so we remain in a controlled smallness that feels like safety, but is in reality a kind of slow constriction. The Stoic concept of memento mori, the remembrance of death, was not meant to be morbid. It was meant to be liberating. If this moment is finite, then its weight is real. If this life is limited, then the courage it requires is not optional. The calm mind is not calm because it has forgotten death. It is calm because it has remembered it clearly enough to stop treating its one life as a rehearsal. Consider what happens to the person who genuinely accepts impermanence, not as a philosophical position, but as a lived orientation. The difficult conversation becomes possible. The creative risk becomes worth taking. The grief, when it comes, is not denied but moved through, because the calm mind knows that resistance to what is real does not reduce the pain. It only postpones it and adds to it the additional suffering of having been absent from one's own life. This is perhaps the most practical thing philosophy has ever offered, the insight that presence itself is a form of strength. Not the performance of presence, not mindfulness as a productivity tool, but genuine contact with what is actually happening, including the difficult parts, approached with the kind of equanimity that does not require circumstances to be good. It only requires that you have practiced being with what is, instead of fleeing toward what you wish were true. There is a story, simple, almost plain in its details, of a monk who was asked how he remained so peaceful when surrounded by so much suffering in the world. He said, "I do not remain peaceful. I return to peace, again and again and again. Every time I am pulled away, I return." The peace is not a destination, it is a practice. That image deserves to stay with us, not the person who never loses the thread, but the person who keeps finding their way back to it. The calm mind is not a mind without storms. It is a mind that has learned the path home. And with each return, the path becomes shorter. The practice becomes less effortful. What once required tremendous discipline begins to feel like a natural movement, the way a tree, shaped by years of wind, leans not in submission but in an elegant, deeply rooted knowing of which way it must bend to remain standing. We began by saying that most people spend their lives trying to eliminate chaos. The truth we arrive at now is different. The goal was never elimination. It was transformation. To meet what is hard with what is genuine. To bring to the disorder of the world an interior order that is not rigid, not fearful, not borrowed from anyone else's certainty, but quietly, thoroughly, irreversibly your own. The calm mind does not survive chaotic times by escaping them. It survives by becoming the kind of place where chaos, finally, has nothing left to destroy.